Wake up, America. We have trillions for a war machine and the banks, while our government stands by and sniffs at the slaughter of innocents in Gaza, where Israel is blocking aid for wounded Palestinians. Here's today's Washington Post. It says the International Committee of the Red Cross said Thursday that it found at least 15 bodies and several children, emaciated but alive, in a row of shattered houses in the Gaza Strip, and accused the Israeli military of preventing ambulances from reaching the site for 4 days. 12 corpses lying on mattresses in one home, along with four young children lying next to their dead mothers. That's a quote. Today, U.S. tax dollars, U.S. jets, and U.S. helicopters provided to Israel are enabling the slaughter in Gaza. The administration enables Israel to press forward with the attack against defenseless civilians, blocks efforts at promoting a ceasefire at the UN, and refuses to make Israel comply with conditions that arms shipments not be used for aggression. Israel is going to receive $30 billion in a 10-year period for military assistance without having to abide by any humanitarian principles, international laws, or standards of basic human decency. Wake up, America.
There was a time when Israelis were safe from Hamas rockets during the recent ceasefire. In May, there were 149 rocket attacks. In June, before the ceasefire started on the 18th, there were 84. In the rest of June, just 3. Throughout July, August, September and October, there were only 15 attacks, and Israel agrees that none of these rockets were fired by Hamas. On November the 4th, Israel launched an attack that killed 6 Hamas fighters just inside the Gaza Strip. They say the militants were building a tunnel to try and kidnap an Israeli soldier. The result was a fresh barrage of rockets from Hamas. After November the 4th, there were 68 and 52 in December. During the entire period of the ceasefire, no Israelis were killed by Hamas rockets.
Our goals are minimalistic and defensive. Success is freeing the civilian population of southern Israel from the fear of an incoming Hamas rocket.
But if that was the case, there were no Hamas rockets during the ceasefire. Before November the 4th, there were no Hamas rockets for 4 months.
And that's correct. And this crisis started when Hamas threw out the ceasefire. When they
surely this crisis started when Israel broke the ceasefire on the 4th of November.
I disagree strongly, sir. Israel acted on the 4th of November defensively because there was a tunnel that was being dug, designed...
But there were no Israeli civilians being killed at that time.
Israel was acting to prevent Israeli civilians being killed. Our operation was defensive. It was in response to aggression from Hamas. It's not just Israel that pointed the finger at them. It was the United Nations, it was Russia, it was Egypt, it was Jordan.
But the civilians of southern Israel are less safe now than they were before you started operations.
The civilians of southern Israel fully support this operation, and you know why. Because they've been living under the threat of incoming Hamas rockets, not for days, not for weeks, but for months and for years. They're trying to create a new security environment in which they no longer have to live in constant fear of an incoming Hamas rocket.
The citizens of southern Israel do support the operation and will be hoping that it ends the rocket fire that is currently terrorising them on a daily basis. The evidence may point one way, but the raw recent experience of these people leads them to different conclusions. David Fuller, More 4 News, Ashkelon in southern Israel.
That it doesn't sufficiently take notice of the Arms Export Control Act, which the United States is governed by in terms of its transmittal of arms to Israel, nor does it take notice of the humanitarian conditions sufficiently, nor establish a true path towards peace. And for that reason, I will oppose this resolution. Israel is an established democracy and a firm U.S. ally. It's also signed agreements governing the use of U.S. military assistance. The Arms Export Control Act of 1976, which governs shipments of weapons from the United States to foreign nations, requires that each nation receiving a shipment of arms from the United States must certify that the weapons are used solely for defensive purposes, not increase the escalation of conflict, nor prejudice the development of peace agreements. And I think in each case, the Israeli use of arms given by the U.S. has failed that test. Israel has had Gaza under a punishing blockade. A blockade is in itself an act of war, at which time Israel has had complete control of access to Gaza. The Israeli government even made a truce with Hamas in bad faith, because at the same time it was making the truce, it was preparing to attack Gaza to pursue its policy of regime change, an all-out attack on Gaza to oust Hamas without any regard to the law or to the consequences to the civilian population of Gaza. The people of Gaza have no army, no navy, no air force. Israel, using F-16 jets and Apache helicopters acquired from the United States, is engaged in a military offensive inside Gaza, escalating the conflict in Gaza, and prejudicing the development of peace agreements, contrary to the letter of the stated policy and purposes of U.S. military assistance to Israel. Now, we know from news reports that the United Nations gave Israel, the Israeli army, the coordinates of UN schools, and that schools have been hit by Israeli tank fire, killing dozens. The UN put flags on emergency vehicles and coordinated the movement with the Israeli military, and those vehicles came under attack, killing at least one emergency worker. The Israeli army evacuated 100 Palestinians to a house and then bombed the house, killing 30 people. They don't have bomb shelters in Gaza. Emergency workers have been blocked by the Israeli army from reaching hundreds of injured persons. Today's Washington Post headline documents that. We all want peace, but we're not going to get peace until we recognize that there are two parties to this dispute, and that we have to also review Israel's conduct as well. That path to peace has to begin with stopping the war, having a ceasefire, constructing a truce, ending the blockade, getting humanitarian assistance to all the people, rebuilding the infrastructure of the Palestinians, rebuilding their economic possibilities, bringing Hamas and Israel together for talks, using that as a basis to a path for peace in the Middle East. This resolution is therefore incomplete, and I will oppose it, but I urge this Congress to take these concerns up again next week so that we can address the humanitarian issues, and by doing so, open up the possibility of this Congress playing a more constructive role in helping to achieve peace in the region by reaching out to all the parties, notwithstanding the devastating conflict that has been visited on both sides. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired.
If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator.